Hi, my name is Cristina and I'm an architect, and I'm very excited to be here because, in fact, it was the power that architecture had to change the world that drew me into this profession. I'm also the director and co-founder of Atelier Jura, a design studio based in North London. I am originally from Spain, as you probably can tell, and I came to the UK over 20 years ago to finish my studies and then to further my practical training, let's say. When you study architecture, you have to go through a series of steps. First, you do a degree. You take a little bit of time away from university to put to practice whatever it is that you have learned. Then you go back to university with a postgraduate diploma or master's, depending on which university you go to, and you go to work for at least 2 years to gain experience on what it is like to run a site and to present packages, etc. And once you have acquired this experience, you go back to university for a further professional training. In this professional training, what you do is you learn about the law, you learn about contracts, and you learn about procurement. Procurement is how you organize everything related to a contract, a construction contract. So, as I said, I came to the UK more than 20 years ago, and I've been working on a variety of practices. I chose the practices where I worked on the basis of what I would describe as accumulative knowledge. Accumulative knowledge means knowledge that I was building up on. Why I did not choose, for example, to go like many of my schoolmates did to a famous large architectural studio. Well, I thought, and I haven't regretted my decision, that if you go to a large architectural office and you're a junior, you are likely to be put in a sort of specific, very specialized type of role, which was not what I wanted to do. Therefore, my first choice was to go to a very small design and build practice, which had a construction arm, and therefore gave me the opportunity to design in the morning and run sites in the afternoon. None of my friends were doing this as young as I was, and it was a brilliant experience because the builders had so much knowledge that I was benefiting from. So I had these ideas and this kind of how would I explain? I don't like the word vision, but I had this blueprint of what needed to be done, and they had the practical insight to help me realize what I was doing. So this was very collaborative, and this kind of determined the way I have approached every project ever since. So from then I moved into commercial practice. Commercial practice is when you go to an architectural studio that produces multiple houses and kind of a high volume of houses. In one of those practices, I started working in projects that they were railway related, where I learned about ergonomics. Ergonomics are the rules around designing things so that they are comfortable to be used, height-wise, space-wise, etc. This was really, really interesting. Then I also learned about educational projects, and I took part in the interior rearrangement of the campus in Hendon of the Middlesex University. After that, in another commercial practice, I started working in regeneration projects, and I worked in regeneration projects even beyond that practice, where I was an associate, for over 10 years actually. I started working in those kind of projects in 2005, and this continued until 2015. So this was super interesting. Now, in regeneration projects, you learn not only about architecture, but also about placemaking. Placemaking is all the things that happen around a building and how they relate to the community. And also, I learned about sustainability, environmental integration in design, and about politics. Regeneration projects, if you are going to do them well, are very political. When you are bringing new buildings to a community that is existing, in order to avoid creating what they have defined as gentrification, which means you bring people with more economic power to a less economically powerful community, and basically you land in there. Bringing wealth to a community is really positive. However, you have to do it in such a way that the existing community is not left behind, and this is really important. And I enjoyed very much this part of the work because I was speaking to the local community. I was speaking to what they define as stakeholders. Stakeholders are the people who have an interest in the impact your design will have in the local community, and it was brilliant. So I will speak on my talk about one of the projects that I thought it was maybe having most I would say a most varied range of viewpoints brought into one project. And so then after I worked in this kind of context for 10 years, I decided to set up on my own, with my husband, our own studio. And the reason was because when you are working at the scale of regeneration, you rarely have the opportunity to meet the people who are going to be living in your homes. I was very lucky, but despite that, that's not very usual. You have a flat type that meets the requirements that have been determined by the local authority, and you just repeat it. And I didn't find this particularly challenging because I always felt I would like to know who lives in that house, where do they put their coat when they enter in the house, where do they have telephone, where do they where do they watch TV. You could not get into this, you could not actually understand how people lived. And I thought if I were to have an impact on the lives of those people, I wanted to make sure that I did it right. So in our studio, what we have been doing is working with individuals and businesses producing solutions to their design challenges. This has been products, architecture, interior, temporary architecture, all sorts of things. And it has been really interesting, very different to what I've been doing before. But as I was saying in the beginning, everything has been accumulating knowledge, and I really enjoy that because I feel that I have been able to grow as a person, and I have been able to develop as well, professionally and personally. So for the past 7 years, I've also been volunteering. And why I started volunteering? Because I have 3 nieces and 2 nephews, and when I had finished one of those big regeneration projects and I presented the images to one of my nieces, she was not very impressed at all, and she asked me why I was doing a boy's job. And this to me was a shock because my grandmother was an engineer and my other grandmother was a seamstress. The engineer, because she was educated elsewhere, not in Spain, when she went to Spain in the 1950s, she had to retrain as a nurse because the engineering side was not an appropriate career for women at the time. And I always grew up thinking I could do anything because we were not living in that kind of society anymore. So therefore, for me, this was a bit of a shock. And ever since, I have been volunteering as the chair of the National Association of Women in Construction in London and South East, and also as a mentor at Fluid Diversity, which is a program to retain diversity within the construction industry because we are not many different looking people. And in addition to that, I also have been sitting in the diversity board of the Royal Institute of British Architects since 2017. They advise the RIBA on matters related to diversity, from how the organization presents itself to also comments that they do in local policy, government policy and things like that, to make sure nobody is left behind. In addition to that, the organization is also an advisory organization to the London Mayor under the Good Growth project. If you don't know it, please Google it because it's super interesting. It looks at how good design can influence the growth of a city in a positive manner. So on the talk, I will talk about all these things I have been sort of touching in this presentation, and I'm very excited and totally scared about how many people you are going to be out there. So I'm going to be thinking I will be talking to one person. I will see you soon.